What is up, everybody? We are back for another edition of the NFT Roundtable, breaking down another wild week in NFTs and Web3. Welcome anyone new to the show here. Happy to have you here. If you're lurking in the YouTube or Twitter streets, feel free to drop some comments in the chat, chime in on the discussion here. I'm your host, Ghost. I'm joined here by several members of the Lucky Trader staff today. We've got Logan, editor-in-chief over at Lucky Trader. He's a Clay NFT maxi. We got Tyler. He's our Lucky Trader content star over there. He's the host of the Lucky Lead and writes the Morning Minute every morning. He's repping the Pudgy Penguin. Guys, how are we feeling today?
Oh, man,
go ahead.
I didn't know if I was able to jump in there. We're doing okay. It's been certainly very quiet. It's a little cold here still, northeastern PA, but yeah, I'm excited to talk about a chilly market as well in the last few days.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolute crickets. There's nothing happening. I was combing through for potential topics to write about for tomorrow morning. There's like 3 posts over on Lucky Trader right now. There's just nothing happening. We did just see a bit of a roller coaster ride in the crypto markets, though. So that's something, at least.
Yeah, that's a good segue. Before we were getting into our normal news headlines here, I did want to pull up the charts and riff a little bit here because we went from a pretty normal day in crypto to a humongous dump out of nowhere. So take a look at these charts here. Let's look at the live update there. That is a big red candle. So Tyler, what are you hearing in the streets here regarding this crypto dump here?
This chart is just so ridiculous. It's literally, I mean, it's almost elevator up and then elevator straight back down after we saw some major gains. So the word on the street initially was it was Mt. Gox related, and the U.S. government was dumping their Bitcoin. And then like I'm hearing people writing conspiracy theories. They're talking about how the U.S. knows they've got this Bitcoin they need to sell, so like they essentially help close First Republic Bank, make that a big deal to pump Bitcoin just so they can turn around and sell it here this afternoon. So that was the rumor mill. But then Hasaka Trades just shared an update about 15 minutes ago. He's a big crypto account, saying that basically there was an alert that the U.S. government was moving Bitcoin in their wallets. The Jump protocol book, they nuked everything based on the alert. Open interest fell 15% across the board when this happened. And then the alert was false. So this was all a false alarm.
How does this?
If you got in at the bottom there and shorted right or longed right here, I feel like this is a good point to start longing, because it does feel like we're just going to recover right away if this was truly a false alarm here. Logan, go ahead.
Yeah, how do false alarms happen in crypto given the on-chain activity? Like it doesn't make any sense. I of course am not like the Bitcoin blockchain sleuth. It's not as easy to maneuver around in terms of data analysis as what I believe Ethereum is, but how does it happen? Like, especially a protocol or a firm like Jump, how do you mess up like that if that's truly what happened?
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, it felt like a pretty normal day today in the crypto markets. I know we got close to 30K on Bitcoin or possibly broke it. Everything was kind of normal, even though we know the NFT market volume has been just anemic. So I'm curious to hear if you guys have any thoughts on that in particular before we jump in, just how we're feeling with the tumbleweeds going on in the NFT space right now.
You know, it feels like the narrative out there is that we might be approaching the end game of blur farming, and just the levels of manipulation and the folks who are participating in the market are just simply those traders and farmers. So folks who might actually want to buy and collect and enter one of these PFP projects are just sitting on the sidelines. And we see it in the daily unique users. So I feel like kind of the consensus opinion right now is everyone just is waiting for things to normalize, waiting for a potential nuke to happen. There's also some folks who think a nuke is happening when blur rewards start to drop there. So it seems like we need some kind of event to take place to get folks off the sidelines. We'll see if that happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think we do need an event. And I actually think, like, in terms of NFTs, I feel like it might be a bit more obvious, like, when that event occurs. Like, I feel like in traditional markets or in broader crypto markets. Like there's all these kind of planned events, whether they be announcements, FOMC meetings, things like that. But they're so consistent in nature that it's really difficult to gauge too much of like, up or down, right? People always speculate, hey, if the number is this, then we're headed this way or that way. I feel like for NFTs, like it's pretty obvious, in my opinion, that like we definitely need some big, exciting, like either it's a new project or new announcement, and we don't move until one of those things happen. And in my view of the market right now, none of those things is on the horizon. If you want to get ecosystem specific, perhaps you could talk about Solana and Mad Lads. We're going to talk a little bit more about that being one of those events. But otherwise, like I don't see anything on the horizon that would jolt that excitement or get people off the sideline. Like it just feels like we're going to need something like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then you have May coming up, which is the typical sell in May and go away. So we'll see if that holds true this time. But there doesn't seem to be much relief coming in the NFT volumes at the moment. Just continued to be down only. But we'll get into that a little bit. Today we're going to be talking about a few different topics here. So we're going to hit Coinbase coming for Gary Gensler's ass, Yuga's court victory, an interesting surge on Solana with Mad Lads, as we just mentioned, and a few other things. But before we get into that, just a reminder, none of this is financial advice. None of us know anything. And if you like this content, make sure to check out our roundtable articles each week that drop alongside the show. So we will drop that in the comments as well. There we go. And without further ado, let's get into our first topic, which is Gary Gensler versus Coinbase. So I gave Gary a little glow up there. I don't know if he's that muscular in real life, but we wanted to have that menacing look to come for Gary Gensler there. So first topic of the day, Coinbase is hitting back at the SEC. In the latest twist in the ongoing saga between crypto companies and regulatory bodies, Coinbase has decided to take legal action against the SEC. As we see with Coinbase Chief Legal Officer Paul Grewal's tweet here, the main goal for the regulation is to get the SEC to provide clear response to Coinbase's request for regulation in the space. So we're just looking for a little guidance here. And for a bit more context, the lawsuit is essentially pushing the SEC to provide some straightforward answers to Coinbase's previous requests that constantly are met with kind of silence there. So that guidance is crucial for the crypto industry to navigate complex legal landscapes. And Coinbase isn't even the only one seeking this clarity. We've seen a significant number of entities and individuals that have submitted comments supporting the request. And we've got a meme coming up here that pretty much sums up the current landscape here. Gary Gensler has repeatedly said that exchanges need to come in and register to be compliant, and yet exchanges have said that they tried and are met with basically silence or hostility there. So the crypto industry in the United States has been facing a lot of challenges. We saw companies being debanked, a lot of uncertainty surrounding the classification of various cryptocurrencies, and the SEC sending out Wells notices left and right, which are basically just telling people that they're about to be either sued or doing something illegal. So not a lot of clear regulatory framework going on right now. And getting some answers would alleviate a lot of the concerns that these companies are having. And meanwhile, while this is all going on, we've got Coinbase both seeking to hold Gary's feet to the fire in court, but they're also making moves to safeguard their company, starting the framework for an offshore exchange by securing a license in Bermuda. So we're starting to see the seeds planted for exchanges to move out of the U.S. if things don't improve there. And Gary Gensler faced the House Financial Services Committee last week and did some Neo from the Matrix style dodging of questions to try to get clarity on if ETH is a security. And his answers were pretty interesting because he certainly seemed to have a different sentiment just 5 years ago when he was lecturing at MIT. We saw some interesting videos surface of him from earlier. We're going to play one here.
So we already know in the U.S. and in many other jurisdictions that 3/4 of the market are not ICOs or not what would be called securities. Even in the U.S., Canada, and Taiwan, the 3 jurisdictions that follow something similar to the Howey test that we've talked about, 3/4 of the market is non-securities. It's just a commodity, a cash crypto. So you'll hear debates about initial coin offerings and what's a security and what's not a security. Relevant and important debate. But for 3/4 of the market, it's not particularly relevant as a legal matter, as a regulatory matter. Brodish.
So that's certainly a much different opinion from what you hear from him in court these days. I also wanted to bring up a little note here related more to NFTs, which was the Stand with Crypto NFT mint from Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, which was kind of a unifying symbol there for the crypto community. So the free NFT on Zora has seen 32,000 mints, and Armstrong was urging users to add a shield emoji on their Twitter display name and sign up to be a crypto advocate. So Coinbase really leading the charge here, and that leads me into a few questions for the group here. How are you feeling about the state of crypto in the US at the moment? And are you encouraged by these moves from Coinbase, or is this kind of the last hope or last gasp for the industry in America? I'll start with you, Tyler.
Yeah, I'm still feeling pretty good. I mean, I think if folks have heard me comment on this show or on the spaces, I'm basically a permabull at this point. And I just think like there are going to be hiccups in the road, but ultimately like we're going to prevail. And it's clear that there are some politicians right now who are trying to keep crypto down, but it just seems too big. And I think there's enough smart people in the U.S. who understand the opportunity and the impact of what would happen if crypto was forced offshore, and what that would mean for all of the people who would essentially leave, how far behind we would become in an increasingly important, technology sector of the global economy. So I think more level heads and smarter heads will prevail. I don't have a read on the short term and what's going to happen here in the next few months. It feels bumpy, but I am very happy with what Coinbase is doing. And it's funny. I mean, if you think about their sentiment rating, post FTX, post BlockFi failing, like I was pulling funds from Coinbase and telling other people to do so as well. It just seemed like nothing was safe. And that wasn't, a negative mark on Coinbase. It just felt like the kind of state of affairs. And now I would feel much more secure, holding crypto with them if you don't want to go the self-custody route. And they're just clearly leading the charge. And they're our white knight, and I'm definitely here for it.
Yeah, I agree, Tyler. In the roundtable that they have the written article, which everybody should check out at luckytrader.com. You used the like head in the sand analogy, right, for how you're typically feeling or trying to be about these types of issues. I'm the same way, in which I like try not to focus too much on the minutia daily, about the commentary from either side, whether it be the regulators and the legislators or the crypto people as well, because everybody has their own biases. So I'm like not trying to pay attention to this too much. And in doing that, like not trying to pay attention, trying to be medium board in a sense, I still feel okay. And I have like a little bit of an underlying optimism always that we'll just sort of figure it out. And the thing that I fear most about getting too in one camp or another is just making a move that ultimately cost me down the road. Like I feel like I'd rather kind of stand pat because I don't really know enough, right? I don't really feel like convicted enough in one direction or the other. So I'd rather sort of stand pat, keep my ear to the ground, to be able, or to have the option to make those moves one way or another. But sort of just stand a little bit paralyzed on purpose, a little ignorant on purpose, just to not like knock myself out of the game on smoke and mirrors from headlines and the politicized nature of crypto with elections coming up and all that stuff. So I am head in the sand *2 for the most part here.
Oh, and that's a good strategy to survive, right? Everyone talks about it's you make it till the next bull cycle. Well, one of the best ways to do that is just not to make emotionally driven moves. Like, can we pull the chart back up? Like, just look at the price action from this week, if we're able to get that back up on the screen. I mean, you could, if you zoom out, like, I think this is the 7-day view, it looks like. I mean, basically, if you look at a little bit further out, nothing has happened. So we're basically at the same levels that we have been if you just like gone to sleep for the month of April and just not check the prices at all, instead of trying to, long bottoms and short tops and all that nonsense. I mean, yeah, just look, from the beginning of April, we're at the exact same price. So, we're coming in and we're sweating these charts every day. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah. Ghost, I want to hear you talk about it as well, because I know you're a longer term thinker. But I'm like wondering, we report daily on the news. Like, that's our job. That's what we do, right? One of the things I think is a struggle for a lot of people that are like coming back to the timeline every single day to try to stay up to date with something like NFTs. For example, is that just like you're so sucked into short-term stuff, it's like nearly impossible to zoom out. So I'm curious to hear, like, Ghost, how you're managing in your own head to like maintain those longer-term positions and thoughts and feelings, because I know, like, personally, I want to have that, but from time to time get overwhelmed on the short-term stuff and then F up, right? And then you're like kicking yourself later because you couldn't hold the level of discipline required.
Right. I feel less about crypto. Like, it's easier for me to just like zoom out and not really care about the short-term fluctuations between Bitcoin and ETH than it is for NFTs, because I think NFTs are just a lot more volatile in general. And then like all it takes is one bad announcement or move from like a project, I feel like, to completely tank a floor, where like I'm long-term bullish no matter what, probably on crypto. So I don't really care what happens in the short term. And it's been easy for me to kind of just dollar cost average in. And like Tyler said, like, it's very hard to time the bottoms and tops of things. And like only the best traders can do that. And so if you're going to get really burned if you're trying to just trade those constantly. So like usually I'm just sitting on my crypto or adding to my bag, not really trying to time any bottoms or tops there. NFTs, I'll admit, it's been harder. And especially like we're seeing it right now, like the medium board phase of like, you want to stay engaged and active, because that's always what everybody says is like, oh, if you're engaged in the bear market, you're going to reap the rewards in the bull. And I've said that too, but it's not as easy as it sounds, because like, man, this is like tumbleweeds right now. And it's hard to like be positive and still be checking things every day. Like, I mean, it's our job, and still we're feeling like there's just nothing going on. So it's tough. And I don't have a great answer for it, but just if you have long-term conviction about something, I would say to just stick that out and know that there's going to be a change eventually. And I think that we've talked about how Twitter kind of exacerbates this problem, I think, because everybody on there is just doom posting and thinking very short term, and that's what gets the clicks and the likes and the views. And I think that fear on the timeline really can affect people. I mean, it affects all of us, so it's tough. But I do want to pull it back to Coinbase a little bit, and I'm curious to hear from you guys a little bit on what you think the landscape would look like if the US continues down this path of like anti-crypto stance. Like, say crypto is completely pretty much banned or heavily regulated to the point where it's not really feasible in the US. Like, what does that look like for the industry as a whole, and for like us as people who live in the US that are still into crypto,
Yeah, it's a bleak picture. I mean, definitely we would lose some talent to some globally, to other countries who are more crypto friendly, right? And we've seen China, we've seen some of the other BRICS countries starting to lead the way in that area, and they want to embrace that. So if the U.S. doesn't, certainly it seems like we might lose, a little bit to them. And then, what does it mean for all of us here? It's kind of it's hard to even imagine. Right, but I think there would be some sweeping changes. It would likely mean just like the cutting off of any, VC raising. It would be a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah, I can't even really fathom it. Like I try to think about, from the infrastructure, jobs, like all that perspective, as Tyler just touched on, certainly very bleak. For lots and lots of individuals, but even from like just an asset class, right? Is it just under 1 trillion or something total market cap, or maybe it's
sounds right?
Yeah, something like that. 1.2. I'm looking at CoinGecko on my phone. 1.2 trillion total per the CoinGecko global market cap thing. That's like 1.2 trillion. I don't know how much of that is US based, but it's a lot, right? Like, it's a pretty major percentage. I don't know. I mean, there's like so many secondary effects that like where does that money go, right? Because it's going to go somewhere. People are going to stay invested. Does it create civil unrest? Like, I'm not sure the pro crypto population here is enough to perhaps warrant anything like that. And of course, not rooting for anything like that. But those are like, in the realm of possibilities. If you look at the probabilities of events occurring, should something like, a drastic measure like that be taken, those are probably in there somewhere. So it's pretty scary. I'd rather not think about it. let's go, just go our bags. Hopefully, things are a bit more positive in the future.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope that Brian Armstrong can lead us to victory here, and I will certainly be supporting that cause there. And I think that you bring up a good point, Tyler. And I don't know that necessarily crypto would die, because I think that the good talent would just go overseas, and that's not really a problem for crypto over a long time horizon. But in terms of us who live in the United States, like my first thought was like, oh, we'll just use a VPN, but likely the ways that we get money off on off ramps would then be conflicted and blocked too. So there's a lot of those second order effects, kind of like you said, Logan, that really mix things up here. So definitely a bleak picture. And let's just hope that Brian can lead us. And I feel very confident with Coinbase leading the charge there. I've always mentioned that I feel like they have been very compliant and are probably the best case scenario for the crypto space in the United States to be that type of leader. So we'll see what happens there. I'm sure this isn't the last we'll talk about it, but I do want to keep the conversation moving and get into our next topic, which is Yuga's big landmark legal victory. All right. So late last week, we saw Yuga Labs win a major court battle against Ryder Rips in a case that has been closely followed by the NFT community for several months now. And the outcome could have some major implications here for intellectual property in the space. So on April 21st, which is last week, a U.S. district court in California ruled in favor of Yuga Labs, stating that Ryder Rips Bored Ape Yacht Club collection infringed on Yuga's Labs copyrights and trademarks. And even though Yuga Labs didn't have an official trademark for the Bored Ape Yacht Club brand, the judge found that they owned it due to the strong conceptual and commercial presence. And there was a good quote from the judgment which said, while virtual goods are intangible items that exist in a digital space, there are also items that have specific uses and values that are dependent on the consumer. And Yuga Labs described the judgment as a landmark legal victory for Web3. And another quote here says, this isn't just a win for us, it's a win for the entire Web3 industry to hold scammers and counterfeiters accountable, a Yuga Labs spokesperson told Decrypt. So the ruling was a massive win for NFT project intellectual property and could deter future copycats or unofficial ripoffs. It's especially relevant, as Tyler mentioned in his Morning Minute earlier this week, for NFT projects like Pudgy Penguins and Guttercat Gang, who have just started giving their brand holders brand toolkits to help them use their IP for marketing and business building activities. So essentially, this case sets a really solid precedent, especially coming from one of the biggest names in the NFT space. So I want to hear from Logan and Tyler here. How are you feeling about this decision? How important was it to the space, and what implications does it have for both Yuga and the rest of us here? Let's start with you, Logan.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important. The biggest thing that stood out to me about this, it's of course not going to necessarily move floor price or anything like that. But the thing that stood out most to me was, and is shared in the commentary, was the potential deterrent of other bad actors, scammers, and others who are trying to prey upon, those who are perhaps less knowledgeable or whatever word you want to insert there about the space itself. And that was one of the worst things about the entire Ryder Rips thing to me. I don't know how many people really fell for, a Ryder Rips BAYC or what have you, but it just was like an overall bad look and bad, bad faith thing for the space in general, despite the conceptual art argument or whatever. So I think I'm most excited about that, the ability for these projects to sort of, build their own trenches and not have to worry about things like this happening in the future, which of course Yuga footed a massive legal bill for future projects right here in this case to set a precedent that hopefully it doesn't happen too often in the future. So that's what I'm most excited about here. I can't speak to the IP or any of the legalese of the actual argument or the case itself. Won't even try to do that. But excited about the potential deterrent and the precedent that's been created.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And I think one nice aspect of this, kind of looking forward, is now these products can rest assured, right? Their IP is their IP, whether or not they trademarked it or not. It's their right, and copycats are going to get shut down. And Yuga had to foot a huge legal bill It's up in the air if they're going to get reimbursed for that, but hopefully future projects won't. And we actually posted an interesting story on Lucky Trader's new AI account, the AI Authority, about a researcher in the Ukraine who is effectively trying to develop stolen NFT art detection software via AI. So building an AI tool to determine if the art of a new project has been ripped off or stolen from someone else. Well, now we've got the legal precedent that you can't do that. It's going to usher in an era of tools to help, shut down, these scenarios even sooner in the future. So I think that part's exciting. And the other piece is a lot of folks feel like the IP and building on IP is going to be one of the bull cases, the best uses for PFP projects going forward and for PFPs to survive. So now the framework is in place that you can do that and not worry about being copied. So it's a big win.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who all of us I think were around for the early days of Bored Ape Yacht Club, but like I vividly remember the early days with Ryder Rips and Pauly and all of them just constantly being a thorn in the side of Yuga. And I can't imagine the frustration of having to devote so much time and resources to fighting these people when like you're trying to build like a bustling ecosystem, and think about all the damage they've done with like the Nazi type websites and things like that. Like it's just been one after another, like constantly for 2 years now. So it feels like a little bit of vindication here to finally get some resolution, and hopefully that's the last we've seen of them. I don't know if that is. We saw the chart though that I pulled up on the Ryder Rips Bored Ape Yacht Club collection, and like they were close to an ETH at one point, which is just insane to think about. And you've seen their other collection. I think he also started Funks as well, which is just the punks facing the other way. And those have had their own little contingent of people there as well. So Ryder is an interesting troll in the space and continuing to kind of push the boundaries, I guess, if you want to call it that, of the IP usage in the space. But it seems like a big win here. And I know we talked about the Hermes bags and that legal case that went down in 2022 as one of the major Web3 legal precedents. So I'm curious to hear from you guys now how you're feeling about these kind of piling up. Like we're starting to get a building of a little bit of case law here for Web3 and taking shape on what people can expect out of IP usage. And do you think that's positive or negative for creators going forward? It seems like it's a positive trend going along here.
Yeah, I think clarity is like so perfect. I mean, we were just talking about Coinbase, right? Like just having any set of clarity, whether it seems like a positive or a negative for the creator or the company or whatever, is just a huge win for the space. And it showcases a maturation for Web3, and it allows for more innovation and like more of these bigger brands and projects to come in and sort of understand what they can do and what they can get away with and like what they can't do. And again, it gives them that legal precedent to be able to stand on any bad actors that may be trying to, take from them or profit, based on their hard work. So I think it's super, super important and impactful and a good positive trend. Again, whether it be positive for the creator or the consumer, you can make arguments, probably in either direction, but for the space as a whole, that clarity, largely positive.
I think the piece from Logan's response that I'll jump on is the maturity piece. And I think it just goes to show like this Wild West world in the NFT space that we've been operating in since 2020, 2021. And like there were no rules, there's no infrastructure in place. You could just kind of do what you wanted and see if someone fought back. And fast forward to 2023, now there's starting to be some legal precedent. And I think these are the foundational pieces you need for some more of the bigger players, to come in and really invest in the space. So, that's definitely a huge win.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's nice to see the courts actually backing these NFT creators, because I feel like you could see the government go one way, as we've kind of seen with crypto, where it's like, oh, NFTs are dumb and a joke, which we see a lot in mainstream media and popular culture, So it's nice to see them actually taking it seriously and giving it some good legal precedent there. But I want to keep us moving here. We're going to switch over to the Solana blockchain for Mad Lad's conversation, which is a surging project over there. So All right. So Solana's NFT market experienced an absolute resurgence last week when Mad Lads, which is a 10,000 piece PFP collection from notable Solana devs Armani Ferretti and Tristan Yavir, was launched. The project quickly sold out and generated more than $10 million in secondary trading volume, which surpassed all Ethereum projects in a 24-hour trading volume on Saturday. This chart shows the last 7 days, which has Mad Lads just narrowly behind the Bored Ape Yacht Club for the top spot there. And for the first day for the project saw some pretty impressive numbers, as evidenced here in some nice company along the Yuga launches there. So this chart says it was the fourth. If you could go back one there, Hunter. Yeah. So the fourth highest non-wash trading day in all of 2023, trailing just Yuga Labs' Sewer Pass and the Bored Ape on 222. So some pretty wild stats. Great company to be in there alongside the top project in the Ethereum space there. And the chart has been really just up only so far, with many already kind of making the statement that the Mad Lads could be primed to fill the void left at the top of the Solana NFT chain with the departure of the gods and Utes over the last couple of months there. And so a little background on Mad Lads. It was the first NFT project introduced within Backpack, which is an all-encompassing wallet that allows for token-gated experiences, playable games, and much more within the app. It's built on the concept of something called XNFTs, which stands for executable NFTs. So their overview says it's the first wallet built for XNFTs, whether it's tokens, decentralized applications, or NFTs. Use all of your crypto assets inside one wallet. So an interesting little app there, and they're kind of treating NFTs as apps rather than just JPEGs. But the mint was initially scheduled for Thursday of last week, and it was delayed to Friday due to overwhelming activity from bots. And then on Friday, we saw an interesting situation with Coral briefly directing bots to a fake mint and collected about $250,000 worth of SOL with a honeypot. And they tweeted honeypot bitch, which was interesting to see from a project. But they eventually refunded all the affected users. But that generated a lot of hype, tricking those bots there. And the project has already seen some major sales in addition to the wild volume, like this sale of over 3,000 SOL, which is the 40 ETH equivalent for the skull, right? There we go. This one, this purple skull here, 40 ETH for a brand new SOL project is nothing to laugh at there. So we've been seeing a massive resurgence on Solana. The volume's going wild. So I'm curious to hear from you guys. Do you feel like Mad Lads is a contender to fill this top spot of the Solana blockchain void there?
Absolutely. We talk about a lot of our commentary is focused on the ETH NFT ecosystem. And like the common narrative is we don't need any more PFPs. There's 7,000 people left and we've got hundreds of thousands of PFPs. Please stop making PFPs. It doesn't seem to be the case on Solana, right? Like DGods and Utes were like by far number one, number two in the PFP game on the Solana blockchain, which has its own cohort of traders. And certainly people overlap, but it feels like that is a very distinct set of traders. And the reality is there aren't that many good PFPs over on Solana. There's been ones from the early days, but like when I think about Solana PFPs, I just think like really low grade art. And here comes a new project with some pretty cool art. It certainly looks better. Like this flaming skull looks a lot better to me, knowing that someone just paid 40 ETH for it than if they just would have paid 0.04 ETH for it or a couple of SOL. So the art is growing on me. But I think my general take on the Solana ecosystem is you just have to be, above average and in the conversation, run a good hype campaign, connect with the community, and then you can do okay in that eco. And we'll see if they've got the longevity to last. But it feels like they've got some serious momentum right now.
Yeah, this one pains me a little bit. I wrote in the Roundtable article that I definitely think contender, if not already number one in just a short period of time. The thing that stands out most to me about this, I'm glad you brought up, Tyler, kind of like this luxury feel and look, right? Like it feels a little bit better because people are willing to pay a little bit more for it. I know we've talked about that in the past, but the feel here to me is very much that like this brand that's been creative and this narrative, like the honeypot bitch thing is like almost perfect. Is that just like they have edge. I don't know how to describe it. I saw somebody, maybe it's Turbo or someone else, referring to like kind of a Peaky Blinders type vibe, which I sort of see here. The art does absolutely nothing for me, but the narrative created around this brand feels very much like, we can own this or we will own this type thing, right? It's like, I don't know how to characterize it other than I felt like based on what's happened thus far, like they very much want to be the number one project on the Solana blockchain. And when I think about other contenders like Claynosaurus, for example, which I love, right? A huge Clay maxi, it just doesn't feel like it has the same oomph. And I feel like you actually need that to be number one. And I know I'm saying a lot of like things that you cannot quantify. I don't think you can quantify anything that I just shared. But it really does feel like, based on the interactions of the team, based on the technology, the honeypot bitch thing, like, I don't know. It just feels like they have kind of the gall to be able to take over. What Frank has left is like this gaping hole of, and I think Frank and D-Gods and Utes had that same thing, right? Which is kind of like, we're going to be the number one project. Sorry, like F you, get lost. Like, what's the thing Poopy said, Ghost? Like, F off in Florida or whatever. Like, Frank,
Florida and get the fuck out.
Yeah, exactly. Frank had that type of thing to me. Those projects had the same type of thing to me. Like a project like Claynosaurus just doesn't have that, despite like the success that they've generated thus far. Like, I think the appeal is different, and this Mad Lads, in my opinion, has what it takes to kind of fill in the gap there.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, right? It's like when I picture a Solana NFT trader, I picture someone with a huge chip on their shoulder, right? Who wants to build a big bag and kind of show off all the the ETH projects that they're number one. It's a little bit of a little brother syndrome in my head, and I'm projecting. I've got no clue. The Solana guys that I met at NFT NYC were great, but this feels like a chip on the shoulder project, and that's part of the narrative and the hype that's been driving it. Claynosaurus, no chip. It's too friendly. It's too nice. You can't be rocking one of those Claynosaurs and be angry at any point in time. Luckily, they're not really competitors. They're kind of in different verticals over there, so the Claynos will be just fine. But I'm with you on the art. My first reaction was I saw some of the floors. I thought they were terrible. I like some of these grails. They're certainly more interesting to me after seeing that price chart, which has been up only for 5 straight days. So I will take a look, but we'll see how these go.
Yeah, I'm curious if you guys are buying Mad Lads aside this breakout on Solana, and are we going to see more new Solana projects popping off, or is Mad Lads kind of a 1 in a million there? And I saw Moon Overlord, who I love his tweets, mention how the gas prices on Ethereum are showing their ugly head again, and like how Solana basically has zero transaction fees, and it's like a perfect environment to trade and build stuff on. So curious to hear if you guys think this Solana breakout is for real, or if it's just a flash in the pan here.
I mean, it's the perfect setup, right? I mean, gas has become a deterrent, and people are tired of it, and are just quite literally sitting on the sidelines. Is it going to drive a Solana renaissance? No, I don't think so. There still needs to be good projects over there. And part of the reasons Mad Lads pumped was a lot of ETH-based influencers who were kind of touting it. Like Mike Dudas was a big one. I've seen some other accounts as well. So I don't think this was a pure Solana community play. They had some help. It's hard for me to track what else is in the pipeline. Like I couldn't even name another big Solana project coming up. So maybe they're out there and I just don't have exposure to it.
Yeah. I think it's tough for me to disagree with Tyler. I don't necessarily disagree, but I certainly think like it could be brewing like a time that could be brewing as a renaissance of sorts. I think that's the word you used for Solana NFTs. The thing I think, maybe like we get lost on is that Solana's a little bit younger. Like Solana has required a little bit more maturity. The blockchain itself, literally, just like not as many people were building on it or doing things on it. Like when NFT summer and all that stuff happened, like there were like 3 or 4 projects. I mean, obviously there were more, but like 3 or 4 legitimate projects, right? And it just feels like, now we've given some of the time for people to build some more legitimate projects to find their way there, like Mad Lads certainly being one of them, in my opinion. I don't see why we couldn't stumble into something like that. But to your point, Tyler, I cannot name another. I actually did know about Mad Lads prior. I've had Backpack downloaded for a while and just did not do any work to try to get like a Mad List or anything like that. Shame on me at this point. But I can't name another, even from covering Magic Eden's posts about launch pads and stuff like that, which I've done religiously for Lucky Trader for the last, year. Absolutely no clue when the next big project would be dropping.
Well, and you have Tensor, which I guess is basically the Blur equivalent of Solana, which I hadn't really even heard that much about. But a lot of those charts are being pulled, and I guess the market share is almost like 50-50 at this point. So there are some competitors popping up on Solana, and people are continuing to build out interesting products on there. So it'll be interesting to see. I think there is something to be said for being a big fish in a small pond, and we kind of are seeing this now. And I'm curious to hear from you guys before we wrap for the day. I mean, do you think that Frank is regretting moving both collections off of Sol? Like maybe I think that it worked out for DeGods, and I think they're doing fine on ETH. But maybe if Utes stays on Sol, they're the top dog there. So I'm curious to hear if you guys feel like he's having any regrets on that.
Such a good question. One, I don't think he regrets the money bag he got from Polygon to move Utes. Although, I mean, Utes volume is in the dumper, right? Like basically there's no volume on Utes anymore, which I think everyone saw coming. Just no one trades on Polygon. I called famously on our spaces for a Polygon summer, and it has yet to materialize. So make it happen, Frank. This is another ice cold take from me for the archives. I think the risk for DeGods was getting caught up in the blur farming, and they don't seem to have gotten caught up, which has been a huge benefit. Somehow them and captains have been somewhat immune to this pure farmer, daily pump and dump scheme. So that's been nice. And then if you've been tracking, DeGods has had some nice sales. I think a 40 ETH sale went across just a few hours ago. I think he's feeling fine. There's a little bit more money over here, and I think they're more in the conversation now than they were before.
DeGods is sitting just below 8 ETH here at 7.77, so pretty impressive given the bleed out that we've seen from most of their projects there.
Yeah, I strongly agree with what Tyler suggested. I think DeGods moving to ETH was a legitimizer for like a validation that Frank created something like really, really strong, right? If price would have dumped, if it was unable to hold up against some of the other mid-tierish PFPs on ETH, which it's far surpassed many of them, right? Like at this point in time, that would have been bad, but it's showcased a ton of strength. So I think that is huge. I think he tweeted famously, maybe not so famously, but has tweeted multiple times about wanting to own basically every blockchain, right? Like we saw that with the DeGods on Bitcoin thing. He had a chance. I think if you leave Utes on Polygon, they're the number one project on Polygon. And you have DeGods, which makes a case for top 5 project on Ethereum. And you have DeGods on Bitcoin, which make a case for, right, top project on Bitcoin, maybe, I don't know. And you like actually start to really, really flex your muscles with that narrative and like starting to make it feel true. The Utes to Polygon thing will never make sense to me. I get you need the money because maybe they didn't have. I just saw something about some layoffs with Dust Labs recently. That was a little bit of drama on the timeline, right? Like maybe they weren't gonna make it, without it, and it was a kind of a company saving type thing. So I can't fault him there. But yeah, I think the Utes thing was bad. DeGods move was great.
I still think that we're thinking on really short time horizons here, and I don't think
we of course are. Yes,
the jury is out yet. So I'm gonna give Frank some leeway here to develop Utes a little bit, and I think that he's got some interesting things cooking between those Polygon partnerships because we know a lot of those Web2 brands are on there, and I'll be curious to see how he integrates those with the Ute points and the reward system going on there.
He sort of started.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Ghost. He sort of started a trend with the Ute points thing. Like 5 or 6 projects now have sort of followed in suit. right behind with kind of like that loyalty point type thing, which is really, really interesting. You have like, of course, Moonbirds, which we talked about last week, but Canpai Pandas, Cryptoon Goons this morning. Like there's a handful of others as well that are sort of doing that loyalty point versus token, which is a really, really interesting thing. But credit to Frank with that. I can't think of a project who had been doing that previously.
Do you think he'll launch something else on Solana?
I think he most certainly will. Has to at this point, I would think. Especially if there's a Solana renaissance. Yes.
Yeah. If he pulls LeBron and comes back, that would be huge.
We always say that Frank is the master of the attention economy. And I think that would, can you imagine what the timeline would look like if Frank announced a new PFP project or something like that on Sol? Like everyone would go nuts. So
I'm buying.
Yeah. It would be, like you said, it would be like LeBron coming back to Cleveland. But I think that's a good segue to wrap here. Any last thoughts, guys? Anything on your mind? Tyler, I know you were commenting on some of the art drops earlier. The art blocks drop today did not do very well. Curious how you're feeling about the art scene over there.
Yeah, it's brutal over in the art blocks world. I'm trying to refresh here. Right before the show, 70 out of 400 had been minted. Likely a commentary on the bear market as well as just kind of low interest in this drop. Looks like 100 have been minted now, so about 25%. Art market not holding strong. I ran some numbers for tomorrow's newsletter, so I'll give a good picture. But basically, since January 1st, all the primary notable projects are down like 50 to 80%. So it's been a rough year in the art blocks market. Other than that, if anyone is down in Austin for Consensus, I will be there tomorrow running a panel at 4:20, the Marketplace Arms Race. Hear about Blur and its impact on the market. Has it been positive or negative, and what does the future look like? So if you're there, come catch the panel. It should be good.
Is that going to be a live stream, Tyler? Is there any way we could watch that?
I don't know the answer to that, but if all the speakers are streamed, then this one will be. We're not in the main convention center stage, so I think we are across the street. So we'll see how many folks show up, but I think it should be fun. We got some good folks.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear how the vibes are there. Logan, any closing thoughts here?
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap back to give a shout out to Klanosaurus that, even though I said I don't think you're the number one project on Solana, super, super strong project, building out a really strong IP. So I have to give a note to Klanosaurus and or some clay-based project every single week.
Well, I'm going to use my little time here to plug Lucky Trader's newest endeavor here, AI Authority. We've been leaning into AI a lot more, and we launched a new little offshoot here called AI Authority. So give that a follow on Twitter if you want to see more threads about AI and the craziness that is developing over there. There's about 1 million new innovations every day in the AI space. So it's pretty wild to watch it all unfold as quickly as it is. But we're going to try to cover it just like we do with the NFT space. So give that a follow. We'll have a newsletter coming out in the coming weeks as well. But that's our show for the day. As always, thanks to my wonderful co-hosts and guests here. And if you want more of our content and hot takes, make sure you check out the Roundtable article that we posted. I've got that in the chat up there. And we hashed out a lot of these same topics and more. And check out Tyler, myself, and Logan on the Lucky Lead every morning on Twitter Spaces at 10 a.m. Eastern. We break down all the NFT news every day, Monday through Friday. For myself, for Logan, for Tyler, we appreciate all of you watching. Have a great rest of the day. And we are out.